Peace process. In 1993, Israeli officials led by Yitzhak Rabin and Palestinian leaders from the Palestine Liberation Organization led by Yasser Arafat strove to find a peaceful solution through what became known as the Oslo peace process. A crucial milestone in this process was Arafat's letter of recognition of Israel's right to exist. In 1993, the Oslo Accords were finalized as a framework for future Israeli-Palestinian relations. The crux of the Oslo Agreement was that Israel would gradually cede control of the Palestinian territories over to the Palestinians in exchange for peace. The Oslo process was delicate and progressed in fits and starts. The process took a turning point at the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in November 1995, and finally unraveled when Arafat and Ehud Barak failed to reach an agreement at Camp David in July 2000. Robert Malley, special assistant to U.S. President Bill Clinton for Arab-Israeli affairs, has confirmed that while Barak made no formal written offer to Arafat, the U.S. did present concepts for peace which were considered by the Israeli side yet left unanswered by Arafat. The Palestinians' principal failing is that from the beginning of the Camp David summit onward, they were unable either to say yes to the American ideas or to present a cogent and specific counterproposal of their own. Consequently, there are different accounts of the proposals considered. Camp David Summit, 2000. In July 2000, U.S. President Bill Clinton convened a peace summit between Palestinian President Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Barak reportedly put forward the following as basis for negotiation. Via the U.S. to the Palestinian president. A non-militarized Palestinian state split into 3 to 4 parts containing 87-92%. Thus, an Israeli offer of 91% of 5,538 square kilometers of the West Bank translates into only 86% from the Palestinian perspective off the West Bank, including only parts of East Jerusalem and the entire Gaza Strip, as well as a stipulation that 69 Jewish settlements, which comprise 85% of the West Bank's Jewish settlers, would be ceded to Israel, no right of return to Israel, no sovereignty over the Temple Mount or any core East Jerusalem neighborhoods, and continued Israel control over the Jordan Valley. According to the Palestinian negotiators, the offer did not remove many of the elements of the Israeli occupation regarding land, security, settlements, and Jerusalem. President Clinton reportedly requested that Arafat make a counter-offer, but he proposed none. Former Israeli Foreign Minister Shlomo Ben-Ami, who kept a diary of the negotiations, said in an interview in 2001, when asked whether the Palestinians made a counterproposal, no. And that is the heart of the matter. Never, in the negotiations between us and the Palestinians, was there a Palestinian counterproposal. In a separate interview in 2006, Ben-Ami stated that were he a Palestinian, he would have rejected the Camp David offer. No tenable solution was crafted which would satisfy both Israeli and Palestinian demands, even under intense U.S. pressure. Clinton has long blamed Arafat for the collapse of the summit. In the months following the summit, Clinton appointed former U.S. Senator George J. Mitchell to lead a fact-finding committee aiming to identify strategies for restoring the peace process. The committee's findings were published in 2001 with the dismantlement of existing Israeli settlements and Palestinian crackdown on militant activity Camp David one strategy. Following the failed summit, Palestinian and Israeli negotiators continued to meet in small groups through August and September 2000 to try to bridge the gaps between their respective positions. The United States prepared its own plan to resolve the outstanding issues. Clinton's presentation of the U.S. proposals was delayed by the advent of the Second Intifada at the end of September. Clinton's plan, eventually presented on December 23, 2000, proposed the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state in the Gaza Strip and 94 to 96% of the West Bank, plus the equivalent of 1 to 3% of the West Bank in land swaps from pre-1967 Israel. On Jerusalem, the plan stated that the general principle is that Arab areas are Palestinian and that Jewish areas are Israeli. The holy sites were to be split on the basis that Palestinians would have sovereignty over the Temple Mount/Noble Sanctuary, while the Israelis would have sovereignty over the Western Wall. On refugees, the plan suggested a number of proposals including financial compensation, the right of return to the Palestinian state, and Israeli acknowledgement of suffering caused to the Palestinians in 1948. Security proposals referred to a non-militarized Palestinian state and an international force for border security. Both sides accepted Clinton's plan, and it became the basis for the negotiations at the Taba Peace Summit the following January. Taba Summit 2001. The Israeli negotiation team presented a new map at the Taba Summit in Taba, Egypt, in January 2001. The proposition removed the temporarily Israeli-controlled areas, and the Palestinian side accepted this as a basis for further negotiation. With Israeli elections looming, the talks ended without an agreement, but the two sides issued a joint statement attesting to the progress they had made. The sides declare that they have never been closer to reaching an agreement, and it is thus our shared belief that the remaining gaps could be bridged with the resumption of negotiations following the Israeli elections. The following month, the Likud party candidate Ariel Sharon defeated Ehud Barak in the Israeli elections and was elected as Israeli Prime Minister on February 7, 2001. Sharon's new government chose not to resume the high-level talks. Roadmap for Peace, 2002 to 2003. One peace proposal, presented by the Quartet of the European Union, Russia, the United Nations, and the United States on September 17, 2002, was the Roadmap for Peace. This plan did not attempt to resolve difficult questions such as the fate of Jerusalem or Israeli settlements, but left that to be negotiated in later phases of the process. The proposal never made it beyond the first phase, whose goals called for a halt to both Israeli settlement construction and Israeli-Palestinian violence. Neither goal has been achieved as of November 2015. Arab Peace Initiative, 2002, 2007, 2017. The Arab Peace Initiative, Arabic. Mubadaratu Salam al-Arabiyyati Mubadarat as-Salam al-Arabiya, also known as the Saudi Initiative, was first proposed by Crown Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia at the Beirut Summit, 2002. The Peace Initiative is a proposed solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict as a whole, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in particular. The initiative was initially published on March 28, 2002, at the Beirut Summit and agreed upon again in 2007 in the Riyadh Summit. Unlike the Roadmap for Peace, it spelled out final solution borders based explicitly on the UN borders established before the 1967 Six-Day War. It offered full normalization of relations with Israel in exchange for the withdrawal of its forces from all the occupied territories, including the Golan Heights, to recognize an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, as well as a just solution for the Palestinian refugees. The Palestinian Authority led by Yasser Arafat immediately embraced the initiative. His successor Mahmoud Abbas also supported the plan and officially asked U.S. President Barack Obama to adopt it as part of his Middle East policy. Islamist political party Hamas, the elected government of the Gaza Strip, was deeply divided, with most factions rejecting the plan. Palestinians have criticized the Israel-United Arab Emirates Normalization Agreement and another with Bahrain signed in September 2020. Fearing the moves weaken the Arab Peace Initiative, regarding the UAE's move as a betrayal. The Israeli government under Ariel Sharon rejected the initiative as a non-starter because it required Israel to withdraw to pre-June 1967 borders. After the renewed Arab League endorsement in 2007, then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert gave a cautious welcome to the plan. In 2015, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed tentative support for the initiative, but in 2018, he rejected it as a basis for future negotiations with the Palestinians. Current status. An article by S. Daniel Abraham, an American entrepreneur and founder of the Center for Middle East Peace in Washington, U.S., published on the website of The Atlantic magazine in March 2013, cited the following statistics. Right now, the total number of Jews and Arabs living in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza is just under 12 million people. At the moment, a shade under 50% of the population is Jewish. In April 2021, Human Rights Watch released its report A Threshold Crossed, making accusations that the policies of Israel towards Palestinians living in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza constituted the crime of apartheid. 132. A further report titled Israel's Apartheid Against Palestinians, Cruel System of Domination and Crime Against Humanity, was released by Amnesty International on February 1, 2022. Israel's settlements policy. Israel has had its settlement growth and policies in the Palestinian territories harshly criticized by the European Union, citing it as increasingly undermining the viability of the two-state solution and running in contrary to the Israeli stated commitment to resume negotiations. In December 2011, all the regional groupings on the UN Security Council named continued settlement construction and settler violence as disruptive to the resumption of talks, a call viewed by Russia as a historic step. In April 2012, international outrage followed Israeli steps to further entrench the Jewish settlements in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, which included the publishing of tenders for further settler homes and the plan to legalize settler outposts. Britain said that the move was a breach of Israeli commitments under the roadmap to freeze all settlement expansion in the land captured since 1967. The British Foreign Minister stated that the systematic, illegal Israeli settlement activity poses the most significant and live threat to the viability of the two-state solution. In May 2012, the 27 foreign ministers of the European Union issued a statement which condemned continued Israeli settler violence and incitement in a similar move. The quartet expressed its concern over ongoing settler violence and incitement in the West Bank, calling on Israel to take effective measures, including bringing the perpetrators of such acts to justice. The Palestinian Ma'an news agency reported the PA cabinet statement on the issue stated that the West, including East Jerusalem, were seeing an escalation in incitement and settler violence against our people with a clear protection from the occupation military. The last of which was the thousands of settler march in East Jerusalem, which included slogans inciting to kill, military police, and supports violence. Protesters in Lod carrying photos of Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was shot dead while reporting in the West Bank on May 11, 2022. In a report published in February 2014 covering incidents over the three-year period of 2011 to 2013, Amnesty International asserted that Israeli forces employed reckless violence in the West Bank, and in some instances appeared to engage in willful killings which would be tantamount to war crimes. Besides the numerous fatalities, Amnesty said at least 261 Palestinians, including 67 children, had been gravely injured by Israeli use of live ammunition. In this same period, 45 Palestinians, including 6 children, had been killed. Amnesty's review of 25 civilians' deaths concluded that in no case was there evidence of the Palestinians posing an imminent threat. At the same time, over 8,000 Palestinians suffered serious injuries from other means, including rubber-coated metal bullets. Only one IDF soldier was convicted, killing a Palestinian attempting to enter Israel illegally. The soldier was demoted and given a 1-year sentence with a 5-month suspension. The IDF answered the charges stating that its army held itself to the highest of professional standards, adding that when there was suspicion of wrongdoing, it investigated and took action where appropriate. Incitement. Following the Oslo Accords, which was to set up regulative bodies to rein in frictions, Palestinian incitement against Israel, Jews, and Zionism continued, parallel with Israel's pursuance of settlements in the Palestinian territories, though under Abu Mazen it has reportedly dwindled significantly. Charges of incitement have been reciprocal, both sides interpreting media statements in the Palestinian and Israeli press as constituting incitement. School books published for both Israeli and Palestinian schools have been found to have encouraged one-sided narrative and even hatred of the other side. Perpetrators of murderous attacks, whether against Israelis or Palestinians, often find strong vocal support from sections of their communities despite varying levels of condemnation from politicians. Both parties to the conflict have been criticized by third parties for teaching incitement to their children by downplaying each side's historical ties to the area, teaching propagandist maps, or indoctrinate their children to one day join the armed forces. United Nations and Palestinian statehood. The PLO have campaigned for full member status for the State of Palestine at the UN and for recognition on the 1967 borders. The campaign has received widespread support, although it has been criticized by the US and Israel for allegedly avoiding bilateral negotiation. Netanyahu has criticized the Palestinians of purportedly trying to bypass direct talks, whereas Abbas has argued that the continued construction of Israeli Jewish settlements is undermining the realistic potential for the two-state solution. Although Palestine has been denied full member status by the UN Security Council, in late 2012 the UN General Assembly overwhelmingly approved the de facto recognition of sovereign Palestine by granting non-member state status. Issues in dispute. The following outlined positions are the official positions of the two parties. However, it is important to note that neither side holds a single position. Both the Israeli and Palestinian sides include both moderate and extremist bodies, as well as dovish and hawkish bodies. One of the primary obstacles to resolving the conflict is a deep-set and growing distrust between its participants. Unilateral strategies and the rhetoric of hardline political factions, coupled with violence and incitements by civilians against one another, have fostered mutual embitterment and hostility and a loss of faith in the peace process. Support among Palestinians for Hamas is considerable, and as its members consistently call for the destruction of Israel and violence remains a threat, security becomes a prime concern for many Israelis. The expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank has led the majority of Palestinians to believe that Israel is not committed to reaching an agreement, but rather to a pursuit of establishing permanent control over this territory in order to provide that security. Status of Jerusalem. The control of Jerusalem is a particularly delicate issue, with each side asserting claims over the city. The three largest Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, hold Jerusalem as an important setting for their religious and historical narratives. Jerusalem is the holiest city for Judaism, being the former location of the Jewish temples on the Temple Mount and the capital of the ancient Israelite kingdom. For Muslims, Jerusalem is the third holiest site, being the location of Isra and Miraj event and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. For Christians, Jerusalem is the site of Jesus' crucifixion and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The Israeli government, including the Knesset and Supreme Court, is located in the new city of West Jerusalem and has been since Israel's founding in 1948. After Israel captured the Jordanian-controlled East Jerusalem in the Six-Day War, it assumed complete administrative control of East Jerusalem. In 1980, Israel passed the Jerusalem Law declaring Jerusalem, complete and united, is the capital of Israel. Many countries do not recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, with exceptions being the United States and Russia. The majority of UN member states and most international organizations do not recognize Israel's claims to East Jerusalem, which occurred after the 1967 Six-Day War, nor its 1980 Jerusalem Law proclamation. The International Court of Justice, in its 2004 advisory opinion on the legal consequences of the construction of a wall in the occupied Palestinian territory, described East Jerusalem as occupied Palestinian territory. At the Camp David and Taba summits in 2000 to 2001, the United States proposed a plan in which the Arab parts of Jerusalem would be given to the proposed Palestinian state while the Jewish parts of Jerusalem were given to Israel. All archaeological work under the Temple Mount would be jointly controlled by the Israeli and Palestinian governments. Both sides accepted the proposal in principle, but the summits ultimately failed. Holy sites and Jerusalem's Temple Mount. Israel has concerns regarding the welfare of Jewish holy places under possible Palestinian control. When Jerusalem was under Jordanian control, no Jews were allowed to visit the Western Wall or other Jewish holy places, and the Jewish cemetery on the Mount of Olives was desecrated. Since 1975, Israel has banned Muslims from worshiping at Joseph's tomb, a shrine considered sacred by both Jews and Muslims. Settlers established a yeshiva, installed a Torah scroll, and covered the mihrab. During the Second Intifada, the site was looted and burned. Israeli security agencies routinely monitor and arrest Jewish extremists that plan attacks, though many serious incidents have still occurred. Israel has allowed almost complete autonomy to the Muslim Trust, Waqf, over the Temple Mount. Palestinians have voiced concerns regarding the welfare of Christian and Muslim holy places under Israeli control. Additionally, some Palestinian advocates have made statements alleging that the Western Wall tunnel was reopened with the intent of causing the mosque's collapse.